Deras and the Next Generation Navigating Punjab Crisis. Our speaker for this session is Santosh Singh. He's an academic, author, commentator, and most notably, a wanderer in absolute awe of ways of humans and its complexities. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome Santosh Singh. Is Mr. Singh here? Yes, please. And the interlocutor for this session, come, please welcome, sir. For this session is Manraj Grewal Sharma, a resident editor of Indian Express and author of a book on Punjab militancy, consulting editor with the UN Environment Programme and Asia Pacific Adaptation Forum and the Asian Development Programme. So over to you both for this session.
Hi, good evening, everyone. If you, like me, believe that Punjab is a state of mind, then Dr. Santosh Singh is a very good Punjabi, which is why he's written this seminal book on Deras. Punjab, you know, is home to 9,000 Deras in 12,000 villages. So anybody from this region who says they've never been to a Dera or they've never heard of a Dera have got their facts mixed, which is a polite way of saying they're lying. And of late, Deras have got a very bad reputation. I mean, they come in the news for all the wrong reasons, for the long and very frequent furloughs given to some Dera head and so on, which is what we people from the Tri-City had a very bad run in 2017 when there was a curfew in Panchkula, Chandigarh, Mohali, because a certain Dera head was convicted. I would rather give the mic to Dr. Singh. What made you think of writing a book on Deras?
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal. The fact is that I never intended to do this work. You know, when I completed my PhD in JNU in the 90s, I was supposed to be doing agrarian studies and all of this. And in my last 2 decades of teaching in Delhi, this is exactly what I was meaning to do. But just that after JNU, I came to Punjab to teach in Chandigarh. And as you know, Punjab engages you with its complexities, frankly speaking. And that is where I think, remember, I followed my agrarian studies idea, and I was doing a project. And that project, that was early 2000, I think 2002-03. And I had gone to Patiala to do that project on agribusiness or something. The story is that I couldn't complete that work, but after 6 months of work, I had to shift to Delhi, to my university where I'm teaching currently, sociology. That's where, but something stuck with me that 6 months of work in Patiala, that one village which I worked. I found that large number of those women who were working on the labor, who were working on the agribusiness farms, were all wearing a particular kind of locket. And I was told that they all belong to a particular kind of Dera. By 2008, 7, 8, I think you are familiar, there's one Dera which was making waves in the media and everywhere. Right, and it looked like that Dera had become synonymous with him. And that I thought was very, very unfair. It's absolutely, misinformation of a very large extent. And, I was thinking that as a sociologist, I must do something about it. This is something which is culturally so very vibrant, so very important amidst us. But if there is something like this, such kind of broad brushing happens, this is not fair. So I remember my piece appeared in the Economic and Political Weekly on this, and I remember that the title I had given, Manufactured Hello, and the idea of little fiefdom for this Sirsa Dera. And I started writing on it. I traveled and traveled. In Delhi, I think and of course, as Manraj is saying that there are 9,000 Deras. Of course, I did not go to all of these Deras, but next 10, 11 years, my agrarian studies idea went in the backdrop, and I was constantly trying to wander and move and travel to various places. One of the things that I realized early on that the work on Deras, most of them were done as a kind of political question. who does vote for whom, and all that. But nothing cultural, nothing in terms of the religious part of it, and what is happening in those Deras, for example. And also this huge amount of broad brushing that was happening in the name of Deras, that I thought I must pursue some of these most prominent ones, right, to create a kind of contrast with this Dera which hogs the limelight, is always there, as you know, that that is the reason why I started pursuing this. And in fact, I very intendedly, I picked up one Dera, which is called Dera Sachkhand Balla in Jalandhar, which hardly ever comes in the news and nobody knows about most of the time. 10 out of 10 people you ask Dera and they will think of some controversy, some of these Babas who are, one, as you know, in the jail already. So I thought that myth making about the monolith, that must be questioned. And there is so much of fascination for monolith that we think we forget about the fact that there could be no better example than Punjab society to talk about diversity and the multi-layered reality of our landscape, religious landscape in particular.
So is that what makes Punjab so fertile when it comes to the number of Deras? Because 9,000 Deras in 12,000 villages, which means a Dera every few villages.
Yeah, there are too many. I think this figure is also very old figure, I tell you. This
So
almost,
there are more.
There could be more. You disagree? Yeah. I think one of the Dera actually, which in my book, which I devoted almost 3/4 of the in the book, and only just about 10 pages on the Sirsa Dera. But then, when my book was published in March, I think most of the early 4 or 5 reviews were, I don't want to name, but they all had given photographs of Sirsa head, who is in the jail now. And I was surprised.
I believe there's an OTT, there's a series called The Ashram.
Yes, all of that. So I told them that this book is not about that. This book is essentially to actually counter that kind of understanding about this manufactured hello around one person, who's an entrepreneurial person. At the max you can say he's into everything. He made films, he sang songs and everything that he did.
We, at Express, we called him for an idea exchange. And then he got a guitar and he sang this Love Charger, fully charged.
Yeah, so yeah. That's what, that was one part when I started doing work on Deras. I think there was most of these people some of them from Punjab University were constantly working on the as a political question, not as a cultural question, and therefore I picked up this idea that, and that is around that time, Penguin, the editor, called me saying that, would you be interested in writing a book on this? By that time, I had written 6 in Economic and Political Weekly and other journals and academic journals. I'm coming from the mainstream academic world. So I thought, it's time now to actually get out of those Routledge and Oxford. And it's important for all of us, especially sitting in the universities and colleges, to kind of reach out to the larger public, because I think this kind of, fixation with monolith and broad brushing about certain ideas is doing so much disservice to our history and our own society. And that's precisely what made me travel, not just in Punjab, but also Haryana and also Banaras. This is interesting. This is something that I would like to share, that never ever thought that there could be so much of Ambedkar in Deras. I was surprised so much, because the only thing, if you asked me, that the Deras that I followed, many of them, and Ambedkar was a constant in all of these Deras. So that I mentioned about in my book, but this is important for us to be mindful of the fact that when you dismiss or when you kind of broad brush like that and you associate Deras with controversies all the time, it actually does a lot of, as I said, disservice to our own history, for example, and there is nothing pathological by definition about Deras.
So at one point in your book, you've mentioned that it is the weakening of syncretic and the space for coexistence that may have spawned so many Deras.
Yes, because I think, but typically the sociologists, we are in the business of, let me put it like that caste and religion studies we do, quite a bit. And caste is something which is very, very mysterious, as a species. It travels even in those places where you don't expect them, right? So even though I think if you ask generally to people, I think, and people will think that is the land of gurus, of course the land of the inclusion, and some of the Bhakti poets' ideas were brought in our revered Guru Granth Sahib, right? In this place, which is so much about diversity and inclusion, and so much about the beautiful syncretic temperament of the idea of India, for example. Why is it that there are so many Deras? And that question is fundamental question to also that we need to kind of engage with. That and the reason I said that there are all of these Deras do have a huge presence of Ambedkar. It so happened it looks like that there were these even though there is you will not say that the caste exists in the manner in which it exists in other places, but yes, caste-like formations emerged even in something which is so egalitarian and so equal space. And therefore, villages after villages, you heard about Dalits voices coming up and they're raising questions, etc., that we are all familiar with. But gradually, some of these, there are especially these Sachkhand Balla, for example, in some 10 years back, and now I think it's quieter. And in
that is the Valmiki Dera, right?
No, that's a Ravidasiya Dera.
Ravidasiya Dera.
And they were in the loggerheads with
radicals.
Yes.
I think one of the Dera heads was shot dead in Austria.
2009.
Yeah.
But the aftermath of that incident was very, very interesting, because I think there were a lot of these. And my study and my experience was that a large number of them were the diaspora element, who wanted to kind of create a what you call a very separate, independent kind of template for themselves. And given the fact that Banaras is very central to Ravidasis, because Banaras is the place of Ravidas's birthplace, as it's considered. So these people have created a pilgrimage there, And when in the 2009 onwards, when the incident happened and there were a lot of these anxieties around, they declared the arrival of a new religion, etc. there. But what was most interesting to me as I traveled with them in their jathas and their in pilgrimage on Ravidas Jayanti, for example, I found that there was no taker for it. Largely, there were the people locally here were not excited about this idea of any kind of segregation. The Maryada they have been following for ages and centuries. They wanted to stick with it. And that was so beautiful. But of course, there were some grievances. And that is what probably the reason why you find there are a lot of these Deras around, because there are also...
Why are Deras so controversial? You have a freezer Baba who's been in the deep freeze for many, many years now.
Nur Mahal Dera, yes. That's what I believe, that these Deras are also experimental, and these are also raise counter questions, some of them, right? And that is why these kind of controversies emerged, and that's possible, because I think I don't see there's a crisis, for example, and once in a while some of these things happen, but broadly speaking, I think this enriches our world. Actually, I think we need to look at it as a very natural, organic part of our world.
Yeah. So one last thing, you said Punjab, don't take small things lightly, because they're very minor things which could matter a lot.
Yeah.
So, and how do Deras?
I tell you,
do they manage to channel various strands of various?
That's very interesting. In fact, there is a chapter in that book which is called about the politics of posters. I mean, how the Deras in Punjab will portray Ravidas will be different from the calendars of Banaras, for example. It will be so much about in the trend of the Nirguni tradition of Punjab, for example. But the moment the train reaches Banaras, Ravidas is painted so differently. There will be a very Krishna avatar of Ambedkar. The calendars and posters are instructive of our time, and they tell you about the regional sensibilities and all of this. So you saw the ring already there. I think this is the briefest session, and therefore I think we will have to conclude. But what I will say is that I don't see these mushrooming, etc., these voices, etc., as crisis moments. I think it's important. This tells us that we are very self-assured people. And Punjab doesn't need to look for any model anywhere. There can be no better template than Punjab society for a diverse society, so a plural society. It's the land of the gurus, which talked about inclusion centuries back. I mean, why do we have to be so insecure about it? So I think I don't see the crisis. I saw in the what topic that we have given. I don't see the crisis. Crisis is when you broad brush. Crisis is when you fall in the trap of the monolith. Don't get trapped with the monolith. Punjab is about diversity. And it's a coincidence that in my preface I quote the great Khushwant Singh's from his 2-volume, The History of the Sikhs. And he talks so evocatively and so emotionally about the Punjab and its diversity and all of this. So I think Punjab society has to be very grounded on that account. I think it's a very self-assured society. Society doesn't have to have any kind of, because I think allow the counter questions to kind of emerge. And so we are temperamentally argumentative societies. And the more we try to kind of engage with it, as I said, in terms of diversity, in terms of respect for each other, and if there are questions, that question needs to be answered, and that's all. I think it will make us a better and more stronger society. So that's exactly what I would like to conclude with.
Yes, sir. Can I get you the mic? Sure.
One question and a related question. Is the 9,000 Deras that are in Punjab, is this show a failure of organized religion? Because I know of 2 well-known cricketers, Yuvraj Singh and Harbhajan Singh, I wrote that in a column. They were members of this Deras, Sacha, Sudha. And they, I think, Sikhism is not meant to have any caste system. But there are many Sikhs who come from the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And I think a lot of them are drawn to these Deras. So isn't that a failure of organized religion?
I will not say this. I think that there are people with, looking for some answers. And as I said, that it is very normal in any society to have a society which nurtures these kind of counter questions and not get unsettled by this. Will of course be a very, very secured society for sure. So I don't think this is a failure for organized religion. But of course, these are all processes, and I think some of these questions need to be answered. Caste question remains a question in India, everywhere. And Punjab is also no exception. As I said, but then it's a great model. If there is one model that all every Indians should follow, is the land of the gurus, the Punjab. So I think we do not have to be really insecure about anything. So that's my answer. I don't think it's a kind of failure of, that's too harsh a word.
Here, Rahul, Mr. Rahul Singh raised one issue about the failure of the organized religion. And it's just not the failure of the organized religion in India, but also we have exported it to other countries in Canada and UK and USA. So you have gurdwaras in London which are based on various castes. Very shocking. You have celebration of the Independence Day in London by Ahluwalia Association, Battisgaon Association, Ambedkar International. So it seems that the caste issue dominates over the national identity issue. We don't have that shared national identity, even when we travel abroad. What do you have to say on this? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this. As I told you, the diaspora, when this 2009 incident had happened, there were at least this very, passionate kind of articulation of this kind. But as I said, locally there was no response, there was no favor to that. But yes, I do agree with you that caste travels everywhere. The Indians go. There's no doubt about that. And how do we handle this is the question that, as I said, it's a question for all of us to kind of respond to.
I would just like to add to it. 5 days back, a senior IPS officer of Haryana shot himself dead at his residence in Chandigarh. His body was discovered by his 17-year-old daughter, who was alone at home. He left behind a suicide note in which he spoke about systemic discrimination and humiliation that dogged him. So caste is everywhere. We could ignore these fault lines, but they remain. And we are talking of the creamy layer. The gentleman's wife is an IAS officer. His brother-in-law is a sitting MLA. But there are fault lines we tend to paper over, but I think what we need is a conversation, a more open dialogue.
And also the caste, more than the materiality of caste, I think it's in mind. I think that has to be purged. I mean, that sense about a equalitarian, equal world, that must have to be brought in. So that's all. I think the caste question is something which remains relevant, unfortunately, even now. Thank you.
Hi. Recently, about a couple of months ago, the most expensive house in Chandigarh was just bought by a leader of one of these Deras. The second most expensive house in Chandigarh is also owned by one of these Dera leaders. Don't you think that most of these Deras are just pocketbooks, personal banks for these leaders who, when they die, the children become the leader, and when the child dies, his child becomes the leader? That these are all basically just hereditary banks that have been created on the earnings of these really poor people, these really poor farmers who we try to include by getting them here. What do you think about that?
Dera you are talking of, the house you are talking of, many of its followers are highly educated, highly literate, highly well-off individuals, and some of them even choose to retire there. So I guess faith is very difficult to explain. It is a refuge. The oldest Dera in Punjab is Dera Baba Nanak. So we are really out of time, I think.
No, that's
Thank
okay.
you so
You
much.
can finish this answer. You want to finish this one? You can finish this one.
No, but I think these are all questions about a particular kind of Dera, as you are saying. There are all kinds of Deras. I mean, so I would not like to say that all Deras are like this. You know, I mean, that would be something which some of Deras are, of course, as I said, there are all kinds of Deras, for example. And therefore, when you make a general statement, I think we have to be very aware of what we are talking about. So we have to be aware of this broad brushing. I think that's all that I like to say. That I do in my book I do talk about some of these nuances of understanding this phenomenon of Dera and why caste is so important. Ambedkar is so important. The caste question remains, you know. In a world which is, that you said that they're all educated still. So caste is not just about the materiality of caste, the economics of caste, but caste is also in mind. How do we take care of that? It's the question that is for all of us to kind of handle.
And for more answers, please read the book.
Yeah.
It's a very fascinating read.
Yeah, do read this.
Thank you so much for listening in.
Thank you very much for this, Manraj and Dr. Singh. Thank you. They're on their way for author signing and for the media bites. We may have a slight shift over here. I think General Narwane is running. He's stuck somewhere in traffic or something. Huh? I was just told that you're